The Galactic Military Academy had exactly 3 rules that everyone agreed upon. Rule 1. Never touch a Rexian's antenna during morning formation. Rule 2. Always double-check your translator before insulting someone in the mess hall. Rule 3. Nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, lasted more than 47 minutes in the torture resistance chamber. That third rule? Yeah. Well, a human was about to absolutely demolish it. My name is Kelvin, and I'm a training coordinator for the Academy's Advanced Survival Program. I've been doing this job for 16 solar cycles, which is approximately 23 of your Earth years, and I've seen every species in the known galaxy break down in that chamber. The proudest Thoraxian warriors, 32 minutes. The stoic Prelian monks who meditate in active volcanoes, 41 minutes. That one Zoltarian who claimed he could survive anything because his species evolved on a planet with 7 suns and oceans made of liquid metal, 19 minutes. And he cried for his egg mother. So when Cadet Marcus Reeves walked into my office that morning, I already knew how this would go. Humans had been part of the Galactic Alliance for barely 3 years. They were still the new kids on the block, still trying to prove themselves, still hilariously unprepared for what the universe actually demanded of soldiers. "Sir," he said, standing at attention with that peculiar human posture that looked uncomfortable but apparently wasn't. Cadet Reeves reporting for torture resistance evaluation. I looked him over with my primary and secondary eyes. He was average height for a human, maybe 5 feet 10 inches in their measurement system, with dark hair cut short and eyes that were an unremarkable brown. His uniform was crisp, his boots were polished, and he had that eager expression that always disappeared within the first 15 minutes of the chamber. "Sit down, Cadet," I said, gesturing to the chair with my third manipulator arm. "Let me explain what you're about to experience." He sat, folding his hands in his lap like he was waiting for a lecture on stellar navigation rather than a detailed description of systematic torture. The torture resistance chamber, I began, pulling up the holographic display, was designed by the Krelix Combine approximately 200 years ago. It uses a combination of sensory deprivation, sensory overload, psychological manipulation, temperature extremes, sonic disruption, and controlled hallucinogenic compounds to break down a subject's mental resistance. I watched his face carefully. Most cadets went pale at this point. Some started sweating. One Beltorian female actually vomited right there in my office, which was awkward because Beltorians vomit through their skin pores. Reeves just nodded. "Understood, sir." "No, you don't," I said, leaning forward. "The chamber will attack every single vulnerability you have. It will find your fears, your doubts, your traumas, and it will use them against you. It will make you see things that aren't real. It will make you hear voices of people you love begging you to make it stop. It will convince you that you're dying, that you're already dead, that everyone you care about is suffering because of you." "Yes, sir," he said, still calm, still composed. I felt my feeding tendrils twitch in irritation. Either this human was incredibly stupid, or he genuinely didn't understand what he was volunteering for. "The average time before complete psychological breakdown," I continued, "is 28 minutes and 33 seconds. The record is 47 minutes, held by Commander Thrake, a Gulvian berserker who literally fought a plasma bear with his bare claws during the Andromeda conflict. Are you still certain you want to proceed?" "Absolutely, sir. Ancestors saved me. They were all like this. Confident right up until they weren't." "Fine," I said, standing up. My exoskeleton clicked as I moved, a sound that most species found unsettling. Reeves didn't even flinch. "Follow." We walked through the corridors of the training complex, passing other cadets from dozens of different worlds. A group of Philaxian students, with their crystalline skin refracting light into rainbow patterns, stopped their conversation to watch us pass. They knew where we were going. Everyone always knew. The torture resistance chamber was located in the deepest level of the facility, behind 4 separate security checkpoints. It had to be. There were regulations about this sort of thing. You couldn't just have a room designed to psychologically break people sitting next to the cafeteria. As we descended, I tried one more time. "Cadet, there's no shame in waiting. You could take more preparatory courses, undergo additional mental conditioning, or—" "I appreciate your concern, sir," Reeves interrupted politely, "but I'm ready." Famous last words. The chamber itself was deceptively simple from the outside. Just a reinforced door with a small observation window and a control panel. Inside, though, the walls were lined with thousands of emitters, sensors, and projectors. The floor could heat to scalding temperatures or freeze to sub-zero conditions in seconds. The air mixture could be altered to create euphoria, panic, or suffocating terror. The sonic generators could produce frequencies that made your bones vibrate or sounds so subtle they bypassed conscious thought entirely. Standard protocol, I explained, pulling up the control interface. You'll be in there for a minimum of 10 minutes. If you need to exit before that, there's an emergency release button on the north wall, glowing blue. After 10 minutes, you can leave whenever you want. The current record is 47 minutes. But I need to stress that there is absolutely no pressure to— What's the maximum time allowed, sir? He asked. I blinked all 4 eyes in sequence. What? The maximum time? Is there a limit to how long someone can stay in the chamber? Nobody had ever asked me that question before. Technically, the safety protocols require us to extract anyone who remains after 8 hours, I said slowly. But that's purely theoretical. Nobody has ever lasted more than 47 minutes, so the 8-hour limit exists only to satisfy bureaucratic requirements. Got it, Reeves said, nodding like I'd just told him the mess hall hours. 8 hours maximum. Cadet, you're not seriously suggesting— I'll do my best, sir, he said, and then he walked into the chamber before I could stop him. The door sealed shut with a hiss of pressurizing air. I stood at the control panel, watching through the observation window as Reeves looked around the chamber, taking in the blank walls and the subtle patterns of the emitter arrays. He found the emergency release button, noted its location, and then sat down cross-legged in the center of the floor. My assistant, a young Brexian named Pelix, scurried over on her 6 legs. Is that the human cadet? The one from Earth? Unfortunately, yes, I muttered, initiating the startup sequence. Let's get this over with. Standard protocol, Stage 1 intensity. The chamber hummed to life. Stage 1 was always gentle, relatively speaking. Temperature dropped to just barely uncomfortable. Lights dimmed and began pulsing at frequencies known to cause unease. Subtle sounds, whispers, and distant screams echoed from unseen sources. Reeves closed his eyes. Is he meditating? Pelix asked, her antennae twitching with confusion. Apparently, I said, watching the biometric readouts. His heart rate was dropping, actually dropping. Increased to Stage 2. Stage 2 introduced the hallucinogens, airborne compounds designed to create paranoia and visual distortions. The temperature swung wildly between hot and cold. The sounds grew louder, more aggressive. Whispers became shouts. The walls began displaying images, fragmentary and disturbing, pulled from psychological profiles, and designed to trigger trauma responses. Reeves kept his eyes closed. His breathing remained steady. His heart rate stabilized at something close to what humans called resting. 10 minutes passed. This is unusual, Pelix observed, which was the understatement of the solar cycle. Stage 3, I ordered, feeling a strange mixture of irritation and curiosity. Stage 3 was where most cadets broke. The hallucinogens intensified, creating vivid, horrifying hallucinations indistinguishable from reality. The sonic generators targeted the inner ear, causing vertigo and disorientation. The temperature hit extremes, the chamber filled with manufactured smells, everything from rotting flesh to burning hair. And the psychological attacks became personal, using data from personnel files to create specific scenarios designed to shatter mental resistance. The chamber showed Reeves images of Earth burning, cities collapsing, voices of humans screaming in terror. It manufactured the sounds of people calling his name, begging for help. It created phantom pains, making his nerves fire as if he were being cut, burned, crushed. His breathing hitched once, then settled. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. Sir, Pelix said quietly. His vital signs are stabilizing. He's entering what appears to be a sleep state. That's impossible, I said, checking the readings myself. But she was right. His brain waves were shifting into patterns consistent with sleep. Not the light, fitful sleep of someone trying to escape reality, but actual, deep, restful sleep. Maybe the chamber is malfunctioning, Pelix suggested hopefully. I ran a full diagnostic. Every system was functioning perfectly. The chamber was operating at Stage 3 intensity, pumping out enough psychological torture to break a trained interrogation specialist, and the human cadet was falling asleep. 45 minutes. He was approaching the record. Stage 4, I said, almost whispering. Stage 4 was rarely used. It was the level reserved for elite special forces training, the kind of intensity that could cause permanent psychological damage if used improperly. The chamber responded immediately. Reality inside that room ceased to have any meaning. The walls disappeared, replaced by endless voids or crushing claustrophobic spaces. The temperature became agonizing. The sounds reached levels that should have been physically painful. The hallucinogens showed horrors beyond description, cosmic nightmares that attacked the fundamental sense of self. Reeves shifted slightly, adjusting his sitting position. Then he laid down on his side using his arm as a pillow. 47 minutes. The record was equaled. 48 minutes. The record was broken. By the ancestors, Pelix breathed. 50 minutes. 60 minutes. 90 minutes. Other training staff started gathering around the observation window. Word had spread through the facility like wildfire. The human cadet was sleeping in the torture resistance chamber. Actually sleeping. Commander Vrelick, the facility director, pushed through the crowd. He was a massive thoraxian built like a tank with armor plating and natural weapons that could tear through steel. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "Sir, Cadet Reeves has been in the chamber for 93 minutes. I reported, still staring at the readings in disbelief. Stage 4 intensity. He's asleep. Vrelk's compound eyes focused on the observation window. We watched in silence as Reeves' chest rose and fell in the slow, steady rhythm of deep sleep. Inside the chamber, the walls were showing images of eldritch horrors. The air was cycling between temperatures that ranged from Arctic to furnace-like, and the sonic generators were producing sounds that should have been liquefying his internal organs. He looked comfortable. "This is unprecedented," Vrelick said slowly. "What do we know about human neurological resistance?" "Very little, sir," I admitted. "They've only been part of the Alliance for 3 years. Most of our data is still preliminary." 2 hours passed. Then 3. The crowd around the observation window grew larger. Cadets from other programs, instructors, even some of the maintenance staff came to witness the impossible sight. Inside the chamber, Reeves rolled over onto his back, stretched once, and continued sleeping. "Maybe humans are immune to the chamber's effects," Pelix suggested. "Or maybe," said a voice from the back of the crowd, "humans are just really good at sleeping through anything." That was Instructor Kayla, a Prelian with 4 arms and a cynical sense of humor. She pushed her way to the front, studied Reeves for a moment, then turned to me. "What was his file like? Any red flags, unusual background, special training?" I pulled up his personnel record on my datapad. Born on Earth, North American continent. Grew up in a city called Detroit. Parents were factory workers. Joined Earth's unified military at 18. Served 2 years before being selected for the Academy Exchange Program. Standard psychological evaluation, no remarkable traits or abilities noted. Average academics, above average physical fitness, no prior military honors or distinctions. "So he's completely ordinary," Kayla said. "Apparently not," Rilke rumbled, still watching the sleeping human. 4 hours. 5 hours. The crowd had thinned somewhat. People returning to their duties, but a core group remained. This was history being made after all. The human who slept through torture. At 5 hours and 37 minutes, Reeves woke up. We all watched as he sat up, rubbed his eyes and looked around the chamber as if he'd just woken up in his bunk. He stood, stretched his back with his arms over his head, the way humans do when they're working out stiffness, and then he walked calmly to the emergency release button. The door opened and he stepped out into the corridor where approximately 20 personnel were staring at him with various expressions of shock, confusion, and awe. "Good morning, sir," he said to me, as if this were completely normal. "Is there a bathroom nearby? I really need to pee." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. We just stared at him. Finally, Pelix pointed down the corridor with one of her legs. "Third door on the left." "Thanks," Reeves said cheerfully and walked off. Commander Vrelick turned to me, his armored plates shifting with barely contained disbelief. That human just slept for 5.5 hours in a chamber designed to break enemy agents under interrogation. "Yes, sir," I confirmed, because there was really nothing else to say. "And he woke up," Vrelick continued, "because he needed to use the bathroom." "Yes, sir." "Not because of the psychological torture, the physical discomfort, the hallucinations, or the sonic disruption." "Correct, sir." Vrelick was silent for a long moment, his mandibles clicking in what I recognized as deep thought. "Kelvin, I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow morning. Include every detail, every sensor reading, every biometric measurement, and get me every piece of information we have about human sleep patterns and their ability to ignore external stimuli." "Yes, sir," I said, already dreading the paperwork. "And Kelvin?" Vrelick added, turning to leave. "Find out if this is normal for humans, or if we just recruited the galaxy's soundest sleeper." As the crowd dispersed and I began compiling my report, I couldn't help but notice one detail that bothered me more than anything else. When Reeves had woken up and walked out of the chamber, his uniform wasn't even wrinkled. He'd slept better in the torture resistance chamber than most of us slept in our own beds. Humans, I decided, were going to be a problem. A big, incomprehensible, deeply unsettling problem. And that was before I learned what happened next. The report I submitted to Commander Vrelk was 17 pages long and could be summarized in 3 words. We have no idea. The biometric data showed that Cadet Marcus Reeves had indeed entered genuine deep sleep cycles while inside the torture resistance chamber. His brain waves progressed through all the normal stages of human sleep, including something called REM, which apparently involved rapid eye movement and dreaming. His heart rate had been steady, his blood pressure normal, his stress hormones practically non-existent. By every measurable standard, he'd had a better night's sleep than I'd had in the past month. The morning after the incident, I found myself in Commander Vralk's office along with Dr. Shannara, the head of our xenobiology department. She was a Philaxian, which meant her body was composed of a semi-solid crystalline matrix that refracted light into gorgeous patterns. Right now, those patterns were flickering an agitated orange, which meant she was just as confused as the rest of us. I've reviewed human sleep physiology extensively, Dr. Shannara said, her voice having that characteristic chiming quality that Philaxians possessed. And I can confirm that what Cadet Reeves did should have been completely impossible. Explain, Vrelk ordered, settling his massive frame into his reinforced chair. Humans evolved on a planet with predators. Shannara began, pulling up holographic displays of Earth's ecosystem. Dangerous predators, big cats, bears, venomous creatures, other hostile humans. Their sleep patterns developed to be extremely light and easily disrupted as a survival mechanism. Even in modern times with relatively safe sleeping environments, humans typically wake up from minor disturbances, a loud noise, an uncomfortable temperature, a bad dream. All of these will interrupt human sleep. But Reeves slept through stage 4 intensity, I added, still unable to quite believe it myself. That's not a minor disturbance. That's concentrated psychological warfare. Precisely, Shannara said, her colors shifting to a thoughtful blue, which brings us to 3 possible explanations. 1. Cadet Reeves has some sort of unique neurological condition that makes him immune to the chamber's effects. 2. Humans have hidden capabilities we don't yet understand. 3. There's something about his personal history that has made him specifically adapted to this situation. I vote for option 1, I muttered. Please let it be option 1. There's only one way to find out, Vrelk said, standing up. We need to interview him. Kelvin, bring Cadet Reeves to interrogation room 3. Dr. Shannara, prepare a full neurological scan. I want answers. 20 minutes later, Reeves sat across from us in the interrogation room, looking refreshed and alert. He'd apparently gone to the mess hall after his bathroom break and eaten a full breakfast. Several witnesses reported that he'd seemed cheerful, joking with other cadets and complimenting the food, which nobody had ever done before because the food was objectively terrible. Cadet Reeves, Vrelk began, his voice carrying that deep rumble that made most species instinctively nervous. Do you understand why you're here? I assume it's about the chamber, sir, Reeves replied calmly. Indeed. You lasted 5 hours and 37 minutes in the torture resistance chamber. You were asleep for most of that time. This breaks the previous record by nearly 5 hours. Can you explain how you accomplished this? Reeves looked genuinely puzzled. I just went to sleep, sir. Was I supposed to do something else? I felt my feeding tendrils twitch again. Cadet, the chamber is designed to prevent sleep. It attacks your psychology, creates hallucinations, causes physical discomfort. Most species find it impossible to even sit still, let alone sleep. Oh, Reeves said, nodding slowly. Yeah, I noticed some of that. The temperature changes, the weird noises, the visuals. But honestly, sir, it wasn't much worse than my apartment back in Detroit. There was a moment of absolute silence. I'm sorry, Dr. Shannara said carefully. Did you just say your apartment was comparable to a military-grade torture chamber? Well, not exactly comparable, Reeves admitted. The apartment was actually worse in some ways. The heating was broken, so it would swing between freezing cold and way too hot depending on whether the landlord remembered to fix it. The walls were thin, so I could hear my neighbors arguing at all hours. There was construction outside that started at 5 in the morning every day, and the apartment below mine had a guy who practiced playing the drums, badly at random times. I exchanged glances with Vrelk and Shannara. We were all thinking the same thing. Cadet, I said slowly. Are you telling us that you learned to sleep through extreme conditions because of poor housing? I guess so, sir. I mean, I worked double shifts at the factory before joining the military. I needed sleep whenever I could get it, regardless of the situation. You just sort of learn to tune everything out and crash hard whenever you have the opportunity. But what about the hallucinations? Shannara pressed. The chamber produces vivid, terrifying images designed to trigger trauma responses. Reeves shrugged. I'm used to weird dreams, ma'am. Sometimes when you're exhausted, your brain does strange stuff. I figured it was just part of the test, so I ignored it and focused on sleeping. You ignored concentrated psychological warfare, Vrelk said flatly, because you thought it was a weird dream. Yes, sir. Commander Vrelk leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously under his weight. Cadet Reeves, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you receive any special training for this evaluation? Any techniques, medications, or enhancements? No, sir. Just regular academy training. And you genuinely found the chamber comfortable enough to sleep? Well, I wouldn't say comfortable, sir, but I've definitely slept in worse places. At least the floor was flat and there weren't any bed bugs. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or possibly resign from my position and become a moisture farmer on some quiet agricultural world where nothing made sense, because at least that was expected. Dr. Shannara, Vrelk said, proceed with the neurological scan. The doctor pulled out her medical equipment, a series of sensors that would map Reeves's brain activity and structure. She attached them carefully, muttering to herself in her native language, which my translator rendered as various technical terms mixed with what I suspected were profanities. After 10 minutes of scanning, she looked up with her colors shifting to a confused purple. Commander, his neurology is completely normal for a human. No abnormalities, no enhancements, no unusual structures. If anything, he's boringly typical. So this is just a human thing? I asked, hoping desperately that the answer was no. That's what we need to determine, Vrelk said grimly. Cadet Reeves, you're dismissed. Return to your regular training schedule. Kelvin, Dr. Shannara, with me. We have research to conduct. After Reeves left looking slightly confused, but otherwise unbothered, the three of us retreated to Vrelk's office. The commander pulled up communication channels to Earth's military liaison office. This is Commander Vrelk of the Galactic Military Academy, he said when the connection established. I need to speak with someone about human sleep patterns and environmental adaptation. The human officer who appeared on screen looked tired, which I was beginning to suspect was just a permanent state for their species. Her name tag read Captain Williams, and she had short gray hair and eyes that had seen entirely too much nonsense. Commander Vrelk? She said with a sigh that conveyed years of exhaustion. What did our cadets do now? One of your cadets, Marcus Reeves, slept for 5.5 hours in our torture resistance chamber. Vrelk explained. The chamber is designed to psychologically break enemy combatants. The previous record was 47 minutes. Can you explain? Captain Williams was silent for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Not polite laughter, but the deep, uncontrollable laughter of someone who had finally heard something that made all the other insanity make sense. Oh my God, she managed between laughs. Oh my God, of course he did. Where's Reeves from? A city called Detroit, North American continent. I supplied. Williams laughed harder. Detroit? Of course it's Detroit. Commander, did Reeves by any chance mention his living conditions before military service? He compared his apartment to the torture chamber and said the apartment was worse. Shannara said dryly. That tracks, Williams said, wiping her eyes. Okay, let me explain something about humans, specifically humans from economically depressed urban areas. We adapt to everything. You want to know how humans conquered Earth? We didn't outfight the predators or outthink the environment. We just stubbornly refused to let anything stop us from getting what we needed, including sleep. But the chamber produces extreme psychological stress, I protested. So does poverty, Williams shot back. So does working 16-hour days in dangerous conditions. So does living in places where violence and noise and chaos are just part of the background. Humans from those environments develop an almost supernatural ability to function despite everything. We call it resilience. But honestly, it's more like weaponized stubbornness. Are you telling me, Vrelk said slowly, that humans can be trained to resist torture simply by living in bad neighborhoods? Not trained, Commander. Forged. There's a difference. And it's not just bad neighborhoods. Humans have slept in trenches during warfare, in freezing mountains, in sweltering deserts, in vehicles, in medical facilities, while being actively shot at. We have documented cases of soldiers falling asleep during artillery barrages. We have sailors who slept through storms that should have killed them. We have people who worked night shifts for decades and learned to sleep during the day despite noise, light, and every possible disturbance. "This is insane," I muttered. "Welcome to humanity," Williams said cheerfully. "We're all a little bit insane. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars. Look, Commander, if you want to understand humans, you need to accept one fundamental truth. We're persistence incarnate. We're not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the fastest, but we absolutely refuse to quit. And that includes refusing to let anything interrupt our sleep once we've decided we need it." "So Reeves's performance is normal?" Shannara asked. "For a human who grew up in challenging conditions?" "Absolutely. You want to really test human endurance? Put someone from a comfortable background in there. They'll probably break faster. But someone like Reeves, who grew up learning to function despite chaos, that chamber probably felt like a hotel to him." After we ended the call, the three of us sat in silence, processing this information. "I don't like this," I finally said. "If one human can do this, how many others could? That's the question, isn't it?" Relic rumbled. "Dr. Sanara, I want you to review all the human cadets in the current class, specifically their backgrounds and upbringing. Kelvin, I want you to redesign the torture resistance evaluation protocols. If humans can simply sleep through our current systems, we need new approaches." "Sir," I said carefully, "what if we can't? What if humans are just fundamentally different in ways that make our traditional methods ineffective?" "Then we adapt," Relk said firmly. "Just like they do. Now both of you dismissed. We have work to do." Over the next several days, word of Reeves's achievement spread throughout the academy. Other cadets started requesting permission to attempt the chamber, especially the humans. We denied most of them, citing safety concerns and the need to revise protocols. But the damage was done. The torture resistance chamber, which had been feared by every species in the galaxy, had been thoroughly demystified by one sleepy human from Detroit. I found Reeves in the training yard a week later, running exercises with his unit. He'd been assigned to a mixed-species tactical squad, and I watched as he coordinated with a Rexian scout, a Thoraxian heavy weapons specialist, and a Prelian medic. They were practicing urban assault scenarios, and Reeves was calling out positions and orders with calm efficiency. When the exercise ended, I approached him. "Cadet Reeves, a moment of your time." "Of course, sir," he said, slightly out of breath but still composed. "I wanted to ask you something," I said, choosing my words carefully. "When you were in the chamber, did you actually not feel afraid? The hallucinations, the discomfort, the psychological pressure, none of it bothered you?" Reeves considered this, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I felt it, sir. I'm not immune to fear or discomfort, but I've learned that feeling something and being controlled by it are two different things. The chamber tried to make me panic, tried to make me break, but I've been scared before, I've been uncomfortable before. And I learned a long time ago that the best response to fear is often just to close your eyes, breathe steadily, and wait for morning." "That simple?" I asked skeptically. "That's simple," he confirmed. "Though I admit the chamber tried really hard. Some of those hallucinations were creative. But at the end of the day, I knew it wasn't real. I knew I was safe, and I knew I was tired. So I slept. And if it had been real, if you were actually captured by enemy forces," Reeves' expression turned serious, "then I'd still do my best to rest when I could, sir. Because if I'm going to escape or resist or survive, I need to be functional. Panic doesn't help. Fear doesn't help. But sleep helps. Always has. Always will." I looked at this ordinary human, this factory worker from a troubled city on a relatively young species homeworld, and I realized something profound. The galaxy had spent thousands of years developing sophisticated torture methods, psychological warfare techniques, and resistance training. We'd assumed that breaking someone required finding their weakness and exploiting it, but humans had taken a different approach. They'd simply decided that nothing, absolutely nothing, was going to stop them from taking care of their basic needs. Not fear, not pain, not psychological warfare, not even military-grade torture chambers. It wasn't that they were immune to suffering, they just refused to let it control them. "Thank you, Cadet," I said finally. Dismissed. As he jogged back to his unit, I made a mental note to update my training materials. The section on human psychology was going to need significant expansion. That evening I was finishing paperwork when Pelix scurried into my office, her antenna quivering with excitement. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, pulling up a data file on my terminal. It was a compilation of records from other human military academies on Earth. Specifically, records of soldiers sleeping in impossible conditions. There were images of humans asleep in combat zones during training exercises, in vehicles on hard floors, in extreme temperatures, even hanging in harnesses during parachute operations. One image showed a human soldier sound asleep in a fighting position while his squad mates conducted combat drills literally meters away. Another showed a group of humans sleeping in a pile during Arctic warfare training, apparently using each other for warmth. A third showed a human who had fallen asleep while standing up during a formation, and her squad had positioned themselves around her to hide it from their instructors. "They're all like this," Pillock said, her voice filled with disbelief. "Every human military has documentation of soldiers sleeping in absurd situations. It's not an anomaly. It's a species-wide trait." I stared at the images, feeling a mixture of respect and deep, existential concern. "Pelix," I said slowly, "I think we may have severely underestimated humanity." "Sir, there's more," she added, pulling up another file. "I found psychological studies from Earth about something they call spite sleeping. Apparently, some humans will deliberately sleep in uncomfortable or challenging situations just to prove they can." "Spite sleeping," I repeated. "They sleep out of spite." "Yes, sir. There are documented cases of humans sleeping through fire alarms, natural disasters, and medical emergencies just because someone told them they wouldn't be able to sleep through those things." I closed my eyes, which was my species' equivalent of a deep sigh. "Of course they do. Why wouldn't they?" 3 months later, the Galactic Military Academy completely redesigned its torture resistance training program. The chamber was still used, but with modified protocols that accounted for humanity's apparent ability to simply ignore reality when it became inconvenient. We also added a new course titled Human Endurance, Understanding Persistent Psychology. It became mandatory for all command track students regardless of species. As for Cadet Marcus Reeves, he graduated top of his class in survival training, though his academic scores were solidly average. He received a commendation for exceptional mental fortitude under extreme conditions, which he accepted with the same calm expression he'd worn walking out of the torture chamber. At the graduation ceremony, Commander Vela gave a speech about adaptation, resilience, and the importance of understanding your allies' unique capabilities. He didn't specifically mention the torture chamber incident, but everyone knew what he was talking about. After the ceremony, I found Reeves standing alone, looking up at the stars visible through the Academy's transparent dome. "Big galaxy out there, Cadet," I observed, approaching him. "Yes, sir," he agreed. "Lots to see, lots to do. Are you nervous about your first assignment?" He smiled slightly. "A little, sir. But I figure if I could sleep through your torture chamber, I can handle whatever the galaxy throws at me." "That's a remarkably confident assessment." "With respect, sir, I'm from Detroit. The galaxy's got nothing on Detroit. And you know what? After everything I'd witnessed, I actually believed him." The final report I submitted to Galactic Command included a recommendation that became official policy. When evaluating species for psychological resistance training, always consider their environmental background and adaptive capabilities. Don't assume that sophistication equals effectiveness. Sometimes the best defense against psychological warfare isn't complex mental conditioning or advanced technology. Sometimes it's just the stubborn refusal of a tired factory worker to let anything, even concentrated torture, interrupt his sleep schedule. Humans, I concluded in my report, are terrifying not because they're stronger or smarter than other species, but because they simply will not accept that something is impossible until they've personally verified it. And even then, they'll probably try it anyway just to be sure. The torture resistance chamber had broken every species in the galaxy except one, and that one species had responded by taking a nap. The galaxy, I suspected, was going to have to get used to that sort of thing, because humans weren't going anywhere, except maybe to bed, because apparently they could sleep anywhere.